Good morning, Stampers. Welcome to Learning with Friends. I am Pat Fairless from Fairless Stamp and Flair. And since today is the last Thursday of the month, I am doing a fun fold card for you. I'm doing one, I call it a Hinge Fun Fold. I don't really know what the official name is. A lot of them I don't even think have official names. So I'm just calling it a Hinge Fun Fold because it has a hinge on it. It's not a hard one. I like it because it's a good way to use designer series paper and you can use multiple patterns and stuff. So I love those kind of fun folds because it gives me a great way to use up DSP and showcase it, right? So let's flip my camera over and let's get started. I should tell you that this card that we're going to make today will be posted on my Fairless Stamp and Flair website tomorrow, Friday, the 31st. And this tutorial will also be available on there. It gives you all the cutting and scoring dimensions, a list of supplies. Here's some step-by-step directions. And then on the back, I have instructions for the inside of the card. I always include those. And there's also a couple templates, diagrams here to show you how to cut and score the fun fold. So I have all my cutting done. So don't worry too much about dimensions. I will try to mention them as we go through, but like I said, this tutorial will be available on my website tomorrow, and it will have all of the dimensions that you need for cutting and scoring along with the templates. So we're going to start. I have the card base, and I'm using Misty Moonlight, and it measures 7 1/4 by 5 1/2, and we're going to score it at 3. So let me just slide this down so hopefully you can see this. And I'm going to line my left edge here with the 3. And we're going to score. And we're going to make sure we put the cutting blade out of the way and just score. And that is all there is to that piece. The only other piece that needs scoring is the hinge. And this hinge measures 4 by 1 1/2. And we're just going to score it at 1 inch. Now, when I use 1 inch, I kind of like to use this side over here of my cutter or my trimmer for the dimensions. It just seems easier to see it for me than otherwise it's kind of hid here under the handle. So when I have smaller ones, I use this side, but you do whatever works best for you. And I will now grab my bone folder and just give these a little bit of a burnish on here. And we're going to always score into the hill. So when I scored on this side, this is my hill. So we're going to fold here and burnish. Now, what I could do, since this is a little bit darker cardstock, I don't know if you're aware of this, but sometimes when you use your bone folder to burnish it, you will get some shine on here. And if you just lay it under a piece of paper, in this case, I'm just going to use my tutorial. See, they're good for more things. Then you don't get that shine on there. That's just a little extra hint. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to adhere the hinge to the base card. And it's going to get adhered to along this edge. So I'm going to align this fold with this edge of the card, and we're going to place it approximately center on there. So I like to use, for this particular kind of a thing, I like to use my liquid adhesive. You could certainly use your Stamp and Seal. And I can do better if I tip it this direction so I can see the edge. And we'll get it close to center. I'm just eyeballing it. That way when it opens, if I need to twist it a little bit, you can always rub your finger along here. If it's a little bit inside the edge, I'd rather have it just inside the edge than outside, because otherwise you will see it from the other side. So that is that portion of it. Now, the next thing we are going to do is let's just put our designer series paper. I'll grab some pieces here and let's go ahead and adhere our designer series paper. And for that, I am going to use my snail. I am a snail preferred person. When it cooperates, it does not always cooperate, but we will just put some along the edges. So far, so good. Now, the paper that I'm using is called Wildly Flowering. It doesn't really have a directionality. It sometimes, depending on the piece that you have, it might look like it does, but on a different area, like here, the branch is going up. But in another place on the paper, the branch will go down. But we're just going to use a piece of this. This is beautiful paper. This is the first card I've used it for. And I think this one here is my favorite. I actually have it here. If you have not seen this paper, let me just do you a quick reveal here. So here's the one I'm using. Isn't that pretty? And you can see here what I mean is these branches kind of go in all directions. So there's really not directionality. The back side of it, we're going to use this side as well. It's kind of a linen look in Misty Moonlight. Here is a wild wheat pattern. And on the back is Moody Mauve as the main colors. I should have separated these a bit. Here is kind of a tone-on-tone Moody Mauve and another wild wheat pattern. This is very similar to the one we're using, just in different colors, but the design is similar. And here, this one is very similar with that tone-on-tone Moody Mauve, but this is in Misty Moonlight. And here again, we have the large flowers that are similar, just in different colors. And here's the back side, I think, of the, oh, no, this one is, I would say this is crumb cake. And here is the back side, some Misty Moonlight flowers, and a Moody Mauve, and a large Moody Mauve pattern. And that's it. But isn't it pretty? And I love how it looks on this Misty Moonlight. This is probably my favorite pattern right here. So next, let's just go ahead, and you don't have to do things in this order, but let's put our designer series paper on the inside. That's going to cover up this hinge, and we'll just get that out of the way. I'm using this linen-like Misty Moonlight, and it seems a shame to cover this up, doesn't it? But sometimes you have to. I can always get more. Okay. And I'm not sure why, but I have better luck aligning my cardstock to each other, my layers, I should say. If I put it on the horizontal, I have better luck getting it straight. I don't know why that is, but that's what works for me, so that's what I do. All right. Now, the next part, we're going to make our little focal point part here. And I have two pieces of Misty Moonlight. These are 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. And this is, we're going to have one on each side. So we're just going to lay that here. I'm going to add some, here again, I'm going to use liquid adhesive. Now, I want to make sure I don't get it over here, right? I just want it over that. So we'll stay away from that edge, inside the edge there. And I take this and I just kind of center it on the front of my card where I want it. And then I'll just push this down. And you can see I didn't get any adhesive there. So now we're just going to take the second piece and I'm going to adhere it right over the top. And that way we have that hinge sandwiched in between. It gives it a little bit more robust stiffness to have 2 layers. Here I like the liquid because I can slide it around and get the edges lined up if I need to. needs to go this way just a smidge. Push it. There, that should work. Close. No, it still needs to move a little bit. Now, everybody says you can always have wiggle room with your liquid adhesive, but I must not wiggle right because it just does not like to wiggle for me. I don't know if I don't put enough on. I am not sure, but I am not a great liquid adhesive person. So I'll get that back off. Let's see if I can get that a little better aligned on the edges. I probably should grab my glasses. That would really, really help me. There. No. All right. I'm making a chore of this. It was better the first time. Okay, let me just play with this just a bit here. Maybe I don't have them cut the same. I think they're cut them at the same time, so it should be. All right, we're gonna call it good. That's good enough. And I am gonna grab my cheaters here so I can see a little bit better, hopefully. All right, now my last layer I'm gonna use is, this is from the Country Woods Designer Series paper. And I'm just going to adhere that on here. This also, I have some samples here I can show you. This Country Woods, it's all different wood grains. And some of them are really unique and very pretty. Let me just slide these out. I have been playing with these most of this week. Here's a very dark wood grain. And the opposite side has this shades of gray and kind of a beige. I think that's our basic beige. And then another layer has this pretty, I'm not exactly sure what color this is. Let's see what they call it. But it looks really worn and aged. And then here we've got this piece of light oak on the back. There's our light oak again with this teal, and I am going to look at the sheet and see if it tells me what color. And I will let you know. Here's another pretty wood grain. All of these are kind of distressed, which makes it interesting on a card. Here's the one we used on the front of our card. And then this is kind of a little bit, it's gray, probably smoky slate. There's a little wild wheat in there, but it's almost got a bluish tinge. And this is gray as well, but it also has kind of a bluish tinge. And then here is a really pretty misty moonlight, and I love the back. I saved the best for last. Isn't that one pretty? So I am just going to look real quick, because I said I would, to see what colors these go with. Basic beige, basic gray, crumb cake, early espresso, gray granite, misty moonlight, pecan pie was the color. I was wondering what it was. Petal pink, and pool party is that pretty one that was with that tealy color, smoky slate and wild wheat. So there's a lot of variety of color here in these different woods. Nice to not just have shades of brown. So let's go ahead and just adhere this to our front. And there we go. Okay. And that basically, that completes the fun fold. Now we will add a piece of white in here for our sentiment. And we are going to decorate this and add some daisies. I used the Cheerful Daisies stamp set to decorate this card, and I mainly used the dies. I didn't do a lot of stamping on this card. So here we want to use this large 3 daisy die, and then we're going to use these combinations that go with it for the large one, the little droopy one. We use both of those, and then the small one. or the medium. I guess that'd be really a medium-sized daisy. Well, I am not going to take your time to cut those. I have those cut. So let me just dump them all out. And I also have the sentiment done. Now, the way these assemble, this takes a little bit of figuring. You would think that this is the bottom, but it is not. This is actually the middle piece. And these solid die cuts, these three here, are actually the bottom layers. Now, before I start adhering things together, I want to add a little bit of color to my center of my flower, or to my flowers. So I'm going to do that on both the middle and this layer, which is definitely more detailed, is the top layer. So I'm going to add that little bit of color. I'm just going to use a blending brush. And for the center of the flowers, I'm going to put just a very light amount of Moody Mauve. And I'm going to clean it off pretty significantly over here. We'll just add this on the center. And there goes StreamYard, skipping around on me again. Sorry about that. I complain to them every other week about this, and they continue to say they're getting it fixed, but no ETA. So we just keep limping along, and I try to keep my eye on it so I don't get halfway through the video and then see that it's switched to show you both cameras, and then it gets kind of small and hard to see, right? Not preferred. So here I'm just going to get this little inside edge. Okay, and that is very light. That's what I'm after. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of color on these leaves. I think I used green, but I'm going to use Misty Moonlight. Now I will warn you, these leaves are quite delicate. So I'm going to hold this well here because I don't want to tear one off. And they're delicate enough that that could happen. So that is all we're going to add to that. And now we can start assembly. So like I said, these solid pieces here are the backings. So I want a little bit of dimension, I guess, a little more. So I'm just lightly with my bone folder curling some of these ends, the ones I can get to anyway. Don't have to do them all. Top layer is probably the most visible. So I'm just doing kind of like when you do curling ribbon, only much more gently, because we certainly don't want to tear them. So I will add some liquid adhesive here. First, I want to get them aligned. Some of them are easier to figure out than others. So this one's going to go right there. All right, so we'll lay it down, and I'm just going to put a little bit of adhesive here in the middle. I don't want too much because I want to leave the edges free out here so they can lift a little bit, but we need to get enough so that it's stable. If you like, you could make one of these layers, and I would suggest the middle layer, making it out of thick cardstock. It will just give it a little bit more sturdiness, and you won't have to worry about tearing, especially the leaves. So there we go. That's close enough, because there's another layer that's going to go on top of here, this other layer. And here I'm just going to add just a teeny tiny bit here in the center. I should have lined this one up first, but I can tell the flat and the flat are pretty much down here. They are actually quite easy to align. Okay, and now let's lay the top layers. Yeah, this one is going to be, these are a little bit more difficult to figure out which way they go. All right, goes like that. And here I'm going to add just a little again, just far enough out from these petals so that in the skinniest part of the petal, I'm supporting it with adhesive, I guess you would call it, right? But still leaving the tips free to float around and lift. Okay, 2 more to go. Almost there. All right, where's this one go? Right about there. Oh, stuck to my finger, not the cardstock. And again, if they're not lined up perfectly, that's fine. Flowers aren't lined up perfectly in real life, I'm sure. And the last one we will put on here. Okay, and that is our flower assembly. Now I'm going to put it on here, get rid of this, I think, and figure out exactly where I want it. I want to leave some room down here for my sentiment, but I also kind of want this to be a little bit adhered on here directly. In fact, I should have gotten, grab this last leaf here didn't get any color. Looks a little white and stark now, doesn't it? So let me just, without re-inking, just get a little misty moonlight on there, and that looks a little less stark. So let's put these on here with dimensionals. And the nice thing about this fun fold is it gives you a nice square focal point, or a focal point that you can make in any shape you want. I will show you a card where I actually made it, use die cuts to make it. I do have 2 more cards to show you, but I'm only going to make this one for you, or we will be here all day. And nobody wants to do that, watch a video all day, right? So let me grab just a smidge. Like I said, I want to have just a little bit of glue down here on this stem area, just to give it a little bit some support, because it is very delicate and I don't want somebody, the recipient, to catch it on something and tear it off by accident. So let's put that right about there, and then I'm just going to hold this down right on the designer series paper, just to give that a little bit of support. And I have this sentiment that is also part of the bundle. So we are going to put this down here along the bottom. And I have kind of found it works best for me if I stick it on here, because otherwise I get it too low and then I have it down off the paper and now holding my flap down, which you don't want to do. Okay, and I have one more thing on the front to do, but let's go ahead and add our sentiment to the inside. This piece is 5 by 2.5. And I had a leftover strip of DSP, so I'm just going to put that right on the edge. My hands are all gluey. And then I will trim it to length. That's a hint that works best for me. If you like to cut yours to length initially, that's fine. I like to leave mine a little bit long and snip them off. I just flip them over. And I'm just sliding this just a hair here. It's supposed to slide, but it's not sliding today. It's very sticky glue. All right. So if I take my paper snips, then I can just follow the edge and cut it off. I like to do it this way better. Number one, it saves me cutting that piece of paper because we all have strips of whatever leftovers, right? But sometimes if I cut them and they're not exactly the same, then I end up not being happy. So it's easier for me to just leave it long and then just cut it to length. Okay, and here again, I am going to flip this horizontal, and we are centering it equal top, bottom, and sides here on the DSP. And I have a little piece that I did not cut correctly. So we're going to try to do it from the top, just that little edge there. Now I'm happy. All right, one more thing to do. I'm going to add just a little tie of ribbon around the hinge to really set off the hinge. I have this braided Misty Moonlight. I'm going to flip that over. Let's see. I'm not tying a bow. I'm just going to tie a knot. So we'll keep it simple. This ribbon will tie into a bow very nicely, but it is a little on the heavy side. So sometimes it's best just to keep it flatter for mailing. Now you do have to kind of watch this ribbon. All right, if I leave this like this, I've got solid. So I want to twist it so that my white braid part of it is facing up when I tie my knot. And as I tie this one around, this is much easier when you hold it in your lap up close to your nose than to do it down on a table a foot away from you. When I flip this through, I need to make sure I keep the braided side up as well before I pull it tight. That way my braid shows on all sides, which is what we want, right? Putting the pretty part on the bottom, and then we will just snip a little piece off here. Oops, there we go. And there is our completed Hinge Fun Fold. Now I could stamp a sentiment in here, and I will probably before I send it. But for now, that is how you make a hinged fun fold. Not too bad, right? Took longer to do the daisies. So the other card I made, I used this Garden Meadow stamp set and dies. And this is an online exclusive. And I just used the wheelbarrow. And here is my card. I colored this with Stampin' Blends. It's just stamped. The designer paper that I used on here is called Meandering Meadows. And this is gorgeous paper. It's 6x6 and it has all different seams. So really, really pretty. Here I did not put a decorative strip. I just put the white only. Gives me lots of room to write a little note for my hello. The envelope I used DSP. And I didn't put my envelope together on that one yet. So we're going to come back and do that. And let me show you a couple tricks how I do that. And here is my third card. This is the one I used the dies for the focal point. And this stamp set is called Thoughtful Expressions. This is a bundle. And I used the hummingbird. And this has the most beautiful dies you can see here in all really, really pretty shapes. So I used these kind of fancy circle ones, I call them. And I just die cut the largest one from Lost Lagoon, and then I die cut my DSP. This is perennial lavender with the next size down. The little hummingbird is watercolored with water painters, and then I just use some, you see a little bit of sparkle maybe. I brushed them with Wink Estella to give them some color. So that is my third card, and again, I did use a strip here. So let me just, since I did cut myself a piece of DSP, let me show you how I do those flaps on my envelopes. I take this and I fold it under. I just put the flap on the top. That way I can keep the glue on the edges. And I do use typically liquid adhesive. Just run a very narrow band right along the edge and a little scribble down the bottom or the middle. And then I just lay my DSP on there. And I usually leave just a smidgen of a gap to the fold. And I mean a smidgen. I will see a tiny, tiny little edge of white. The reason I do that is because I've had in the past when I did it, I would kind of put it right on it, and then this edge gets caught by the ravages of our post office. And this way, if it's down, I've had better luck with it arriving intact. And then I just flip it over, follow the edge, and trim it off. The perfect size for that seems to be, for this DSP piece, I use a 6 by about 2 3/8. You can try 2 1/4. It's just a little bit short, so I use 3/8 and then just cut it off. But so now we have a complete set of stationery, cards and envelopes, right? So that completes our Hinge Fun Fold. Let me flip my camera back. All right. I hope you like that. I hope you try it. It's an easy fun fold. There are definitely more difficult ones out there, but it does give you some variety of things you can do. You can use, obviously, a different shape for your focal point. You can use circles. You could use diamonds. You can use squares, as I did on a couple of them. Just play around. Whatever dies you have, experiment with those. And it's a great way to showcase designer series paper. You can see on the one we made today, I actually used 3 different designs on that one. And so it's what I like, and it doesn't take too long to do it. So I hope you like that. If you learned something today, give me a thumbs up. Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here. If you're new, welcome. I'd love to have you subscribed, and you'll get a notice each time that I post a new video. And again, just a reminder, the card we made today will be on my Fearless Stamp and Flair website. It's fearlessstampandflair.com tomorrow, and you'll be able to download that tutorial that has both the written directions and list of supplies and all the dimensions. So again, thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week with something else. God bless.